Tim Walberg, Michigan 7th District. I've always been a supporter of English being a national language, even before I knew that it wasn't our national language. I came to understand that while I was in the state legislature and people were saying, you know, we need a national language. And I said, we do. We do have a national language. And then I checked and I found out there's no place that calls English, especially American English, our national language. We don't require people to speak that as a national language. We don't encourage them necessarily, except for the fact that they live here. And we say for those that want to become American citizens that you need to speak the language. And yet we know that that has not been the case for quite some time, and that people get citizenship without being able to speak the language to any degree. The idea of a nation comes down to several things. One, that we have common borders, that you can define a country. Number two, that we have generally people that believe in the principles that make us a country. Here in this case, the Constitution that I have hanging on my wall, and Bill of Rights and Declaration of Independence, those documents that establish the country for what it is. But then thirdly, and not necessarily in that order, it's a common language. A nation like ours certainly is a melting pot. You know, I'm a Svenska. My father came over from Sweden, but he came over to be American, and his parents did. And so the language was something that they saw was important at that time to develop, to learn English. And Grandma never allowed us to learn Swedish. She said that our Americans be no longer Swedes. Not that they rejected their heritage, but they saw America as the place that offered them all sorts of opportunities. So the language became important so that her sons could go to New Trier High School in the northern shore of Chicago, and while she cleaned toilets and sewed for the rich people up there, she knew that her sons had the same opportunities that their kids had. And so to talk English, to speak the language, to be able to communicate fully and effectively, to be able to use the language in educational opportunities, to use the language in acquiring jobs as young people, to use the language to go on further and be fully American, looked at in no way different. And so I think it's a point that we have to get back to, and saying, yes, we are a melting pot. Yes, there are traditions that come from all over the world that enrich this country. Yes, there are languages that people will know. But when we communicate, for whatever purpose, English will be our official language. And we will not spend significant time in the future, I hope, with all sorts of languages put in books that we have, and operation manuals and application forms, especially if we're talking to people who live, work, play, and consider themselves to be Americans benefiting from what America is. So language is important, and I'm hoping that it won't be the too distant future that we, like most other nations, will say, this is our national language. We welcome you all, but we speak English here. I think they need to speak up, and they need to speak up with their members of Congress, and they need to get their friends and neighbors and family members to do the same. You know, when I talk about why we have the outcomes of elections, I say we're all responsible for whatever turned out. And some people react to that and say, well, I didn't vote for that person or this person. I say, well, you may not have, but how many other people did you get to the polls to vote the way that you wanted them to vote? You knew that they would. You knew that they should, but you didn't do the effort to accomplish that. The same is true with a piece of legislation like Steve King's bill. If they truly believe in it, then let's develop a lobbying corps for that. That's not only within your own sphere of influence in your local community, but you've got friends, family members all around this country in many cases. Talk to them about it. Have them talk to their member of Congress. They'll have a better impact upon that person than you would calling them. And as we expand that, we have an opportunity for change.